Okay, what do you need to do in order to understand the lecture? That's probably the important question for you. Now, there are 4 things that I'm going to talk about. The first thing is that you need to be aware of all of the parts of the language that carry meaning. Now, you all know that words carry meaning, so words are obvious. You've got to be aware of the vocabulary of the language, the words. But there are other features of the language that you need to be aware of. For one thing, you need to be aware of stress, okay? Now, the next thing that you might want to listen for is intonation. And finally, body language. So when you listen, you need to understand all the carriers of meaning in language. Okay, the next thing you must do when you listen is when you listen, you need to add information that the lecturer expects you to add. All lecturers assume that they share some information with their audience and that their audience does not need them to spell out every word. And listeners have an ability to add this information due to 2 sources of information: their knowledge of a particular subject and their knowledge or experience of the world. Okay, so remember, listening is not a matter of just absorbing the speaker's words. The listener has to do more than that. The listener is not a tape recorder, absorbing the speaker's words and putting them into his or her brain. Rather, listening involves hearing the speaker's words and reinterpreting them, adding information if necessary. So the meaning is not in the word alone. Rather, it is in the person who uses it or responds to it. So that's the second thing that a listener must do: add information that the lecturer assumes that they share. Okay, the third thing that a listener needs to do, and this is to me the most important thing of all, and that's to predict as you listen. Now, let me give you 2 reasons why you have to predict. For one thing, if you predict, it helps you overcome noise. By being able to predict during the lecture, you could just keep listening to the lecture and not lose the idea of what's going on. So predicting is important to help you overcome outside noise and inside noise, okay? And another reason that predicting is important is because it saves you time. Now, when you listen, you need time to think about the information, relate it to old ideas, take notes. And if you're only keeping up with what I'm saying or what the lecturer is saying, you have no time to do that. So predicting saves you time. If you can guess what I'm going to say, you're able to take notes. You're able to think. You have more time, okay? And there are 2 types of predictions that you can make: predictions of content and predictions of organization. Let me give you an example. In terms of content, if you hear the words, "Because he loved to cook, his favorite room was the..." What would you expect? Anyone? Kitchen. You can guess this because you know people cook in the kitchen. Also, you can guess this because you know that after the word "the," you expect a noun phrase. So you can predict words, content, okay? And you can also predict organization. So if I gave you some examples, you'd probably expect me to tie the examples together. Make a generalization to tie the examples together. So you have expectations of what the speaker is going to talk about and how the speaker will organize his or her words. Now, the last thing that a listener must do, the listener must evaluate as he or she is listening. Decide what's important, what's not. Decide how something relates to something else, okay? And there are again 2 reasons for this. The first one is evaluating helps you to decide what to take notes about. You can't, again, you're not a tape recorder, so you can't get down every word. If you evaluate, you think what's important to write down, what's not important to write down. And the second reason is that evaluating helps you to retain or keep information, okay? And studies have shown that we retain more information if ideas are connected to one another rather than just individually remembered. So evaluating helps you remember information better because it connects ideas to one another. Clearly, there's a lot involved in listening to lectures. And what I'd like you to do is think about or imagine what problems would particularly affect non-native speakers. Why would a non-native speaker have more problems than native speakers based on some of the things that we've talked about?